Hi guys. Today is June 3rd, if I have my calendar right, and just wanted to give you guys an update for life in Peru. We are still under strict lockdown quarantine. Our quarantine started May 16th, March 16th, and is for sure going to last at least until June 30th. And even if it does begin to end June 30th, that will just be the beginning of a slow transition back into whatever life we're able to, the things we're able to do in life that will still keep the virus under control. So it's much more restricted than in the States. And as you can imagine, that causes a lot of difficulties. There's no interprovincial travel, so we can't go see our church or family. There's strict curfews. It was at 4 p.m., but the government changed it to 6 p.m., so we can be out a little later if we have things that we need to get done. But still, only essential things are open, like hospitals, groceries, stores, and banks. Last week, the government did open up the ability for people who work in maintenance to be able to make house calls, things like that. Some maybe like mechanic work, appliance maintenance, things that where it's difficult to keep going in life if you can't get those things maintenanced. And I think dentists can now open up, but nothing else. There's no other stores open, nothing else open. And I know that in the States, a lot of us would be maybe rebelling in a way because of the lack of freedom, but I really understand the strict measures that have been taken here in Peru. Our hospitals are already overwhelmed. Our hospitals just don't have the resources to take care of the level of emergency cases that come along with coronavirus. Especially here, there's just less medical care, and the death rate is much higher. Now, we're in a large city where there is more medical care, there's more hospitals, but we also, like in a normal day, we'd get people coming in from a lot of other little towns to come get medical care here, and now they can't. And so in a small town like Japan, where one of our missionaries, Ronald, and his wife are serving, the last week when we heard the statistics, even though it's a small town, they had 180 cases and they'd already had 40 deaths. So that's over 20% death rate because they don't have a hospital, so they just have a little medical clinic. And here in Trujillo, the death rate has also been rising, and a big part of it, we've talked with friends who are doctors and nurses, and a big part of it has just been because at the hospitals, they don't have the capability to take care of the numbers that are coming in. And so we have people who are having to be cared for in the hallway, which is not uncommon on a normal day in Trujillo. But with coronavirus, which is highly contagious, that's definitely an issue, and the hospital staff isn't able to get all the protection they need, so we have a lot of hospital staff being infected. And honestly, while Milton and I both feel pretty good, we feel pretty calm most days, every single day there's that moment where you feel the anxiety of the situation, you know? We're thankful to be living in the seminary, and we only go out to buy groceries, to do bank withdrawals and deposits. So we felt safe here at the seminary, but you know, honestly, there's always that, at least once a day, that just the thought comes into my mind where I think, you know what? If I get coronavirus, maybe I'm part of that 80% that doesn't need hospitalization. But if I were to need hospitalization and be in an emergency case, I could die in a hospital here, you know? That's it's a possible thing, just because they don't have enough ventilators, they don't always have enough oxygen, and I don't know if they have enough of anything that is used to treat coronavirus. But then you just kind of have to calm down and say, you know what, it's okay, because I can't control that, And even if I die, I know that I'll be with the Lord. But, you know, there's just that fear that comes in. And then in these last couple weeks, double the anxiety, just also thinking about all the things going on in the States, and just the racism and unjustness in the world, and then also the reactions that are happening. So that you know, that does weigh a lot emotionally. And so, yeah, like I said, every day there's a moment where you just kind of get overwhelmed, and thankfully the Lord continues to provide. Something like tonight, I felt really good all day. We got a lot done, and then I had to face some thoughts about coronavirus as we were trying to get some help to someone. And so, but in the evening, by the time I was ready to come home from my office on the other side of campus to home, I felt anxiety settling in. And right when I got home and sat down, my brother called me. And I know the Lord knew that's exactly what I needed. So I'm thankful for the Lord and His kindness and mercy, and seeing that throughout this time. And so I wanted to share a little bit about a few things that have happened this week that have reminded me of the Lord's work during this time. If you follow us on Facebook, you have seen we asked for prayer for Fanny and Carlos and their baby who was born a few weeks ago. It was a mess. It was really difficult because hospitals are only taking emergency cases. So instead of going to the hospitals where they should have had their baby, they were sent from clinic to clinic. And in the end, I think I posted a Facebook Live video, and we thought things were more under control. But she ended up needing an emergency C-section, and the clinic where she was couldn't do that, and they tried to keep inducing labor, and in the end her husband decided to take her out of that clinic, even though that posed a risk, and send her to a private clinic where they had to pay extra for her to get an emergency C-section. So that was all crazy, but the cool thing is to see that there is now a healthy baby in the apartment next to us. And Carlos and Fanny have talked about how God really used that. They needed to see how bad he talked about how they felt they had reacted badly, really losing hope in that time of trial, and the Lord really used it to show them that He has plans to care for them, because even in the midst of all that craziness, Kaliam arrived to this earth healthy. You've also seen me post about our neighbor across the street. She is not a believer, but her husband passed away a few weeks ago in the middle of quarantine. He actually passed away from a heart attack, which is very unexpected because he was relatively young, probably his early 40s, and seemed healthy. And so it just kind of totally blindsided her and her 3 kids. And the reason I mention that is because I've quite literally been praying over the last year that the Lord would give me more opportunities to develop our friendship. Because her and I have always been friendly, and we've talked about the Lord a little, and she's always been kind but resistant, saying that, you know what, I think it's great, I think God exists, I think, you know, it's good that you follow Him, but I really don't want to pursue anything further in my life. And I've asked the Lord to keep giving me opportunities to get close to her. And we really weren't expecting it to be in such a difficult time, but because of the quarantine, no family can come over. Only 4 people could be at his funeral. And here in Peru, when someone passes away, your house is full, completely full of family and neighbors at the wake for 3 days until the body's buried. And so instead of getting those 3 days to mourn with family and friends, she got nothing. And so we living across the street, we were able to we prepared a little care package for her and her boys, and made some brownies, and included a New Testament and a book. It was called, I think the book that Pastor Julio's wife found was called Somebody Does Care for You, and it was full of scriptures that talk about the Lord's care for His creation and His people. So it was really sweet to be able to go take that to her, knowing that no one else had been able to visit her. And since then, she's been very thankful. And she's also she's asked questions, she's asked me over a Facebook message, like what do I think happens when people die, if she'll be able to see her husband again. They're hard questions to answer, and been asking them for the Lord's wisdom to know how much to share and how much to just be a support. But I'm really thankful to see the Lord's answer to a prayer, that in the middle of tragedy, He's given me that opportunity that I prayed for, to be a friend to her and be able to develop that friendship. So I ask that you pray for her. Her name is Milagros, and she has 3 kids. The oldest is about 17, and the youngest is 4 or 5. Another thing that really impacted me and Nilton this week, we have a friend who is a doctor in one of the hospitals here, and he parks his car in the seminary and to keep his car safe so that he can walk home, because he lives very near. And the other night he came and knocked on our door, and we opened to see what was going on. And he was there, and he just started crying. He had on his huge mask. He uses this mask. It's kind of like a gas mask. He was just crying. And he works in pediatrics here in one of the hospitals and deals with kids with lots of serious diseases, and particularly deals with a lot of kids with leukemia. And because we are in emergency lockdown, the inter-provincial travel is prohibited. And so the patients who he would normally send to Lima to pediatric oncology, which we don't have here in Trujillo, he can't send. And so he has had several patients pass away in the last few months just because they can't be treated for their leukemia. And this week he had a 14-year-old girl pass away just because he couldn't send her to Lima to be treated. And he was just bawling because on top of all of the coronavirus stuff, he's having to watch his patients who he's cared for pass away because he can't send them away for proper treatment. And so I think I share this so that you would pray for him. His name is Eleazar, and I ask that you would pray for him because he's really struggling. He's a believer, but I believe he's definitely really struggling with that. It's very difficult, and the stress of going to work every day and coming home and worrying if he'll give coronavirus to his family because he's been around it has been there since the beginning. But if you'd pray for him, pray for our brother, and pray for the families whose kids are struggling and can't be sent to Lima. There's a lot of diseases for which people are sent to Lima and can't right now. A small clarification here. I later found out that it's not just because interprovincial travel is restricted right now, but because Lima just can't receive any more patients. And so the hospitals in Lima aren't receiving any new references from doctors in the other provinces. And so that's why a lot of patients who need to go to Lima can't go to Lima. And, I mean, travel is restricted, but the hospitals in Lima can't accept any more patients. I asked Nilton what he wanted to share with you guys in this video, and he asked specifically, he said, this month's going to be pretty busy for us. We have a lot of different responsibilities, as I've shared with you before, and so we're both teaching classes. I'm teaching some missions classes and English classes at the seminary, quite a few actually. I'm teaching 6 this semester, and Nilton is teaching piano classes. He only has 1 student now because only 1 student is on campus, and so he can only socially distance in an appropriate way with 1 student because no one else can come to campus for it. But so he's continuing to teach music here at the seminary too. But Nilton is also taking classes. He's still taking classes. He has his diploma in missions, but is trying to finish up his bachelor's in theology, with a hope that with his bachelor's in theology he would be able to continue to study towards a master's in the future. And so we have all the class stuff going on, all the class prep and online work. But we also serve as intermediaries for Tom Cox World Ministries, and so we're constantly encouraging church planters here and talking with their Peruvian sending churches and talking with churches in the States who support them, and making sure money gets to where it needs to be, and making sure people are fulfilling their responsibilities according to the agreements that have been made. And also working with missions in our Regional Baptist Association. And so this month we're trying to get out a bulletin to let everyone know what's going on with our missionaries and remind people to be giving for missions. And also, obviously, I'm working as the Director of Administration at the seminary, and so working on financial reports and all that, and making sure people still get paid even though we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so there's a lot going on, and it's always going on, but I think Nilton felt like this month is going to be particularly busy. And so he asked that you would pray for peace, for every step, that the Lord would provide for all these things that are going on. And yeah, just pray for wisdom and for all the ways that we get to encourage the growth of missions and also the continuing of missions here in northern Peru. So to finish the video, I wanted to give a more updated update, and today is June 17th. So most of the month has passed, and things stay about the same here in Peru. Thankfully, Nilton and I are very thankful. The Lord continues to give us peace, even though there's moments of anxiety. But I know that you guys are praying for us, and that's been helping a lot. But it does feel stronger than it did in the beginning of June, because pretty much every day we get news from people we know saying that one of their family members has passed away. And in this month, one of Nilton's uncles and his aunt, who live in Lima, passed away from coronavirus. And so did the father of his 7-month nephew. So we ask that you pray for the family, pray for Nilton and his family. It's been pretty hard for him this week, even though he wasn't very close to his uncle and aunt, and Christian's father was very separate from them. He wasn't a very present father, but it's still tough to know that how much it's affected the family and his mom. And so if you'd pray for that, pray for the family, pray for our pastor and his wife and his son, who have all been diagnosed with coronavirus. All 3 of them have diabetes, and thankfully with treatment they seem to be doing all right. They are feeling a little better and they're at home. None of them had to be admitted into the hospital, but we know that they're still in the middle of the whole process. So we ask that you pray for them, because we know that they're at risk because of their diabetes. Also for a missionary friend named Wilder, who many of you know. He supports a church in the mountains of Huamachuco, but has spent the quarantine here in Trujillo with his family, and he and all his family have coronavirus. So we ask that you would pray for them for a quick and total recuperation. They did not have. We didn't know that they had got diagnosed until after a week or two. I think his children had it first. They've had it for a couple weeks, and he's right in the middle of the worst part of it. And we found out because I contacted him about something for one of the classes. He's in one of my classes, and I contacted him about one of his homeworks, and he let me know that what's going on. And so he had not yet been taking any medicine. So we were able to help get him medicine today, and so I asked that you would pray that would be effective. And also I ask that you pray for all of our students. Here on campus, we have about 10 students living on campus. Over in the apartments, there's several families, and 3 of the families are from Venezuela. And they came to Peru to raise money to be able to send back to their family, because I don't know if you know, but Venezuela is going through a tough time economically and politically over the last several years. And so their families have been depending on the money they send back. And so as they study here at the seminary, they have classes and they support their families. And now that coronavirus has put us all into quarantine, they're all without work. And many of our students off campus as well, most of our students are without work. And so you can imagine the strain that they feel. And obviously the professors we aren't trying to overwhelm them. We're going very slowly with online classes. We'll probably take an extra month out of this the school year to be able to finish. But just I ask that you pray for my students, that the Lord would provide, and that they would be protected as well physically. But yeah, those are just some prayer requests that I ask for, that you'd pray for health and wisdom. And let us know, how can we be praying for you? We love to keep in touch and know what's going on. And we ask that you just continue to think of the countries like Peru, who will not get over coronavirus the same way that the States will, It will not be as easy. There will be a lot more deaths, and there'll be a lot more loss economically as well. The people here don't have safety nets. They depend quite literally on day-to-day work. About 75% of the population does. So there's many people who are not having a fun quarantine. So, and because of that, many people are disobeying the quarantine, which, the president continues to say that that's why the number keeps going up. But people in desperation don't. I think you question, is it worth me dying of starvation to stay just to make sure I don't get sick? So that's tough to deal with, thinking about how many people are suffering with that around us. So we ask that you pray for Peru, pray for the countries of the world, and we continue to pray for you guys and pray for the U.S. And anyways, we love you. Hope to stay in touch.